Before I show you this video, I want to stress the importance of something people should know about and people don't know about, apparently. Note this, keep in mind, we are still in the calendar cycle of 2023. Right now it's February. The new year doesn't begin until March 21st. Now I also want you to look at this. You see the American Civil War, 1861 to 1865? Now look at this. 2023 minus 150 years. This is 1873. Yeah? Have yourself a listen, then I'll say my piece. Oh look, and it didn't work. What I just experienced is a social engineering tactic to do away with attention spans. So what you were looking at, what I was just looking at, disappeared. Instead, I'm presented with some superficial shit in my feed, and most people aren't going to try to find the information again. In many cases, it's virtually impossible to fucking find the information again unless you took notes and or clicked the bookmark option, which I do religiously these days. It's ridiculous.
150 years ago, you didn't have to ask permission from the government to go fishing, own a property, build on your property, renovate your home, use a transportation vehicle, start a business, get married, own a weapon, hunt, cut hair, sell a product, protest, grow your own food, sell that food that you grew on your own property, or even just set up a lemonade stand. And now, you virtually can't do anything without asking for the government's permission first. So if you still think you're free, you're deluding yourself. Hate to break it to you, but you're a free-range human in a tax farm.
No, that's fine and dandy, but it's superficial shit. What took place between then and now? And most people can't answer that question unless they've been hanging out with me online. I'm not just trying to stand on a soapbox on that note, by any means. This information's available to the general public is what I'm getting at. So if people were not confusing research with entertainment, they would dig deep and they would figure this shit out. So the Republic, which is what for the people, by the people represents or should represent and no longer does represent, the Republic fell during the Civil War. I'm going to repeat that because it's important. The Republic, for the people, by the people, fell during the Civil War. And it was finalized in 1871 when what people consider America today became all capital letters and became a fucking corporation. Specifically, the Organic Act of 1871 created the District of Columbia. Now, people don't understand this either. The District of Columbia is the bottom of the trilateral city-states. Our masters were setting up pieces on the board because they're playing the great game. This is something else people don't know about, and that goes back to the 16th century. In other words, this post is very superficial, and a lot of things have taken place, and most people are blissfully unaware of all of it. I'm giving you some crude steps. The Republic fell during the Civil War, was finalized in 1871, and that turned America into a corporation, which means that it was no longer for the people, by the people. Now, keep in mind, there were still some people that remembered what was what, and or were told what was what. So other things were set in place to subjugate us, one of which took place in 1913. Some of you might be familiar with that. That's when the Federal Reserve was introduced under the pretense of being not only voluntary, but temporary. Now, what that did during that time frame was there used to be these things called bonds. So if you and I didn't want to go to war, because it was still bits and pieces of, the for the people, by the people, clinging to the last death throes of it. This is why I mean the Republic fell during the Civil War and was finalized in 1871, approximately speaking. Like I said, just little bits and pieces were still clinging to it. We still had bonds. So you would buy a bond if you wanted to go to war. If you didn't want to go to war, you wouldn't buy a bond. In a way, you could think of it as a monetary system of voting, even though voting is a fucking joke. What it's become. And again, it's because it's not for the people, by the people. So the Federal Reserve was rolled out, and that's what made us, what she's saying, free-range tax slaves. You and I became debt slaves. Currency became promissory notes, essentially. Currency became greenbacks, a debt-based system. In other words, currency in circulation is debt. To drive that point home, and again, you guys got to look into these things. Don't just repeat what I said in the video. I want you to look this shit up because it's available to you still. Even though Google's no longer a search engine, it's a tool of propaganda. Just take any dud out there talking about Google Earth. That is a tool of propaganda and an absolute joke. But back to point. So 1933, the Corporation of America was purposely bankrupted. It's bankrupt. And by 1934, Fort Knox no longer contained gold. Now remember, or appreciate rather, because most people don't know these things, all presidents are stewards of the corporation. I'm talking about the District of Columbia, the bottom of the trilateral city-states. So when you heard about JFK supposedly wanting to introduce a silver standard, being that we didn't have a fucking standard, this is because we no longer had gold in Fort Knox. It's one superficial way to appreciate what I just said. And that's back in the 60s, if memory serves me right. So well after 1934. There are bigger things happening these days that people don't know about as well. As of July 2023, FedNow was rolled out on the 1st of July, while all of these brain-dead kids were superficially talking about the sound of Freemasons, which finances human trafficking. During the same month, July 24th, because our masters love to drive shit home and they understand how the system you and I are a part of works. It doesn't have to do with the flat earth or the globe theory, but most people repeat that shit. July 24th, they rolled out WorldCoin, which gave a digital incentive if you signed up with it. And people bought into it instead of looking into it. Also remember, during July 2023, people were waxing poetic about a lizard person on a plane, a distraction campaign, likely a CIA asset. And most people bought into that shit. That's what I saw on TikTok. I didn't see people talking about, WorldCoin or FedNow by and large. And when I posted things, it was systematically censored because we live in the age of patently fascist horseshit. And most people are paving the way with cancel culture and positive vibes only, which are censorship campaigns. Anybody you've ever heard of say unalived, they are the fucking problem. Fascist horseshit. But as always, what the fuck do I know? How many people are following this? Well, if they got 1,000 in there, they're probably not censored because they're probably shopping around some adult fairy tales. But one last time, what the fuck do I know?